You know, I was reading this gospel this past week, and of course we know who Lazarus is, but what's the rich man's name? We don't know, do we? Probably because we may be the rich man, right? We may be the rich man. There's a story of a botanist who was working in the highlands of Scotland, and he had his whole equipment. He had a microscope and all sorts of equipment there, looking at flowers and different things in the hills of Scotland. And a shepherd came up to him with his sheep and was asking him what he was doing. And then he asked the botanist if he could look and see under the microscope to see some of the stuff. And the botanist said, "Sure, no problem." And when he was looking, he was like, "Wow, what a beautiful flower." And the botanist said to the shepherd, he said, "It's all over the hills." And he said, "Isn't that something?" He said, "I've been tramping on that beautiful flower my whole life." And you know, it's just like Lazarus was trampling all over, or the rich man was trampling all over Lazarus, wasn't he? And sometimes we do too. There's Lazarus all over the place, some living in our own homes. There's all sorts of Lazarus around. And we're not really tuned into it, are we? There's a word called habituation. You don't hear it often, but you know, it's applied to drug use, meaning the habitual use of this drug, and it decreases the effects, so you have to use more habituation. But I looked the definition up, and this is what it says. Decrease in responsiveness upon repeated exposure. Decrease in responsiveness upon repeated exposure. Could be exposed to a spouse, couldn't it? Repeated exposure to a spouse, repeated exposure to your children, repeated exposure here at church or at workplace. What happens to repeated exposure? Decrease in our responsiveness. Habituation, it destroys many things. It's no one's fault, it just happens. It just happens. Happens in marriage, it happens in the workplace, happens here at church. I come here every week. Come and go, come and go, come and go. Marriage, same thing. Decrease in responsiveness upon repeated exposure. On Friday night, I have a routine. I usually do my prayers, and then I read the readings for the next day for my homily, for the daily homily, you know. So I read the readings. It's from St. Luke. It's a short little gospel, and in the passage it said, Jesus said, "Pay attention to my words," and then he tells him what he was going to say. And I'm reading this. I read it again. It says, "Pay attention to what I'm going to tell you." And I stopped. And I thought, here I am reading this thing, and all of a sudden those two words, what are they? Pay attention. Sticks out like, what are you doing, Ted? Sitting there, I've been doing this for 25 years. Pay attention to what you're doing. This is pretty important. You know, you get into this rhythm. I'm just reading this message like I do every night, this gospel. And all of a sudden these words say to me, pay attention to what you're reading. And I'm thinking, ooh. But you know, it happens in marriage. It happens with the kids. It happens in school. It happens at work, doesn't it? And sometimes we just need to say to ourselves, wait a second. But see, that's what happened to the rich man. He wasn't a bad guy. He just wasn't paying attention to who's sitting there in the front step. And sometimes we do the same thing, don't we? We do the exact same thing. As I was reading this, I was also reading another story. It made me laugh. There was a man trying to get a donkey to go, and this little boy stopped and was kind of making fun of him. He said, And he said to the little boy, he said, I can get my donkey to do anything I want with a kind word. And the boy was kind of making fun of him and saying, it doesn't look like it to me. And he said, sure he can. He said, watch this. And he picks up a stick and swatted the back end of it. He said, I just have to get his attention first. But you see, that's what we need, something to get our attention, don't we? And that's why it's important for us to go to church. It's important to pray. It's important to go to that chapel over there. Because it makes us aware of the important things in life, doesn't it? To pay attention. To pay attention. Because if not, we'll just be like the rich man and not being aware of those around us. And so this week, my friends, is good for all of us. As I learned that lesson on Friday night, those two little words, pay attention. Pay attention, especially to the relationships around us. God bless you.